Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Miss Bauer here. Today we're going to be talking about points, lines, planes, all of the basic geometry vocabulary that you need to know. Geometry is all about shapes, so what are the things that build shapes? And that leads us into our EQ is what are the basic building blocks of geometry? And you're welcome to write these down take some notes on notebook paper. The keys will be on Canvas. There's a blank copy of this on Canvas if you just want to go access that blank copy, however you want to do it. But heads up, I would take some notes down so you are prepared for whatever's assignment or quiz or some sort of assessment that you could possibly have over this. So a point is an exact location in space with an indefinite shape and size. You already know what a point is. You've seen them on graphs before. It's literally just a dot. And we represent points with capital letters. So I could call this point A. I would use a capital letter. And then if you asked me what it was, I would literally say that's point A. And that's how I would name it. Okay. Key thing there being uppercase letters. Lines, you already know about lines as well. They're objects that have no thickness and they extend indefinitely in both directions. Now that word indefinitely might seem scary. That just means infinitely. And maybe you're thinking infinitely seems just as scary, but all that means is that if it's going infinitely in both directions, I'm going to use arrows. So this right here, that's not a line. This with arrows makes it a line. And you need at least 2 points for a line. 2 points make a line. You can have more, but you can't have less. So knowing that 2 points make a line, if I have 2 points, they could have been here and here. I always connect them, add arrows. I have a line. That's it. So on my line that I already drew, I'm going to go ahead and put point A, and I have to have a second point. I'm going to put point B, which means I could call this line AB. So I'm going to write AB, put a little line over it. And notation just means naming. That's my notation. That's the name of that line, line AB. Sometimes on lines you'll see this little like kind of italicized, little like curly letter off to the side. Like that. You might see like M, or you might see like a D or Z or any sorts of things. Like M and N are really popular. L is really popular as well. That's another way to name a line, is I could just call this line M. The difference is lines are lowercase, think LL. Points are uppercase because they're pointing up. Lines, lowercase. So the only difference between a line and a line segment is that the line segment is part of the line and it has 2 endpoints. So, for example, what I had drawn just above when I did this, that's a line segment with A and B as my endpoints, or X and Y, or C or D, it doesn't matter, whatever points I want to do. For this example, I'm saying AB. Sometimes it will look like that. Sometimes people really like to emphasize those points on the end. And if I ask you to name it, it's going to be just like before, AB. But now I'm not going to do a line. I'm just going to do a line segment on top, just like that. And there's my line segment. A ray is part of a line that consists of one endpoint, and then it extends indefinitely in one direction. So if you think about that, I've got one endpoint. Let's just call that A. And if it extends indefinitely in one direction, what do you think would go at the other end? Well, hopefully you answered arrow, and if you did, you are correct. And over there, I always have to have 2 points for segments, lines, rays are the same. So I'm going to call this point B. I would name this ray AB. Now, here's where things get tricky, and I don't even like the word tricky because they're not that tricky. I have to name this AB like that. I cannot do this. I can't say BA and do the arrow that way because the arrow's not with the A, the arrow's with the B. And so people will go, oh, so let's just swap it around. Let's just do this. Unfortunately, that's not allowed either. You cannot write it either one of those ways. Your arrow symbol always has to go like this. Always, always from left to right. And then you just fill in your letters underneath. So for example, if you had this, CD, like that, C is with my endpoint, D is with my arrow, so it would be just like that. So there's just another example. Opposite rays are just rays that are going in opposite directions. That's it. So for example, what's opposite of up? Down. What's opposite of left? Right. So if I want to have one that goes to the right, I call that XY. If one goes to the right, the other one has to go to the left. So it's going to go across. And people always say, it looks like a line. It does. They're just going in opposite directions. Looks like a line. Cannot type. There we go. And if I were going to name this, I have two rays here. So I have this one right here, XY. So XY, always have to have my arrow going to the right. The other one is going this way. It doesn't matter when I name it. I still have to have my arrow do that. I still have to have my arrow go from left to right, which means it starts at X and the arrow is with Z. So that's where people tend to get tripped up on opposite rays, is which way that they do the arrows. Another key symbol in geometry, so we've talked about lines, line segments, rays, opposite rays, is an angle. And you've heard about acute angles, obtuse angles, right angles in the past. Angle is just formed where two rays meet at a common endpoint. The key thing being they're not going opposite directions anymore. So if I decide that I want to have one of my rays go from the left to the right, and I'm going to call it XY, my other one can go wherever I want it to be. So I can have it there, make it acute. I can make that angle a lot bigger. I can make that angle make the L shape, which means 90. I can make it obtuse if I want. It doesn't matter. So let's say I call that point Z. Key thing with angles is now I need to use the angle symbol when I name it. So the difference between the angle symbol and a common misconception is less than, is my angle symbol looks like this. My less than symbol looks like this. And I can just call this angle based off of the vertex angle, which is just angle X. Or what you can do with angles is you can trace the angle. So start at one direction and trace it, and I can call this angle ZXY if I trace it. And I could trace it from the opposite end and call it angle YXZ if I wanted to as well. I've got some options here. So we talked about all these different shapes. Points, if you haven't noticed, I have points on everything. Points make a line, points make a segment, points make a ray, points make opposite ray. I need points to make angles. And I need 3 points to make a plane. So planes contain at least 3 points. Contains just means they have. And the same thing with a line. A line was 2 points. It's at least 2 points. So for a line, I need at least 2 points, but I could put, if I wanted to, a third or fourth point on here. I could get really crazy and add a bunch of them if I wanted to. But I need at least 2 to make a line. So back to our plane. A plane is a flat surface, like a desk or a piece of paper, but it extends infinitely in all directions. So the way, if you think about it, is if you were on the second floor at Harmon and you just wanted to keep walking and keep walking and keep walking and keep walking and stay on the second floor, On a plane, you would. It would just keep extending and extending and extending and extending and extending. You probably have seen movies with those bridges that just like appear as the person's walking. That's kind of what a plane is. So the question becomes, how do you draw a plane? It's just a slanted rectangle. So all I have to do is draw a slanted rectangle. I'm using this cool app that fixes my pictures for me because I'm a horrible artist. That's okay. And then I'm going to give it 3 points. I'm going to call it A, B, C. Let's throw a D in there for the heck of it. And I'm going to call this plane. And remember, 3 points make a plane, so I just need to pick 3 points. I could call this plane ABC. I could also call this plane ABD. I just need to pick 3 of the 4 points, and that's it. That's how you name a plane. Sometimes on planes, what you'll see is you'll see a letter in the corner, and it won't have a dot next to it, so it won't be a point, but you'll see like this italicized K or J. That's another way that you could name it. If you have a letter like that and it has no dot next to it or no point with it, that means that that is the name of the plane. So I can call this plane K if I wanted to. That's planes. So bisector is a line or a plane that bisects an angle or line segment. So if you remember anything about definitions, you're not supposed to use the word in the definition. So it says bisector bisects. All of that means is that it cuts it in half. So I am going to draw a segment. And all that a bisector does is it cuts it in half. So I'm going to just draw a line. And if I put ticks on here, all of those ticks are showing is that this is the same as that. And that this piece right here, this line, that is my bisector. The bisector is just whatever cuts it in half. So if I have an angle, oh, sorry, bad drawing there, y'all. So if I have an angle, all that a bisector does is it cuts it in half. So if I do this, that's not really cutting it in half. I'm getting closer, 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 right around there. There we go. That would be cut in half. And on angles, sometimes you'll see these little symbols. That's just showing that the angle was cut in half, split in half. So bisector, as long as you remember that it's just cutting an angle or a segment in half. You can't cut a line in half. So just remember, you can't cut a line in half. So line can't cut in half. Plane you can't cut in half. Lines, planes, and rays cannot be cut in half. So not everything can have a bisector. And I know that this definitely seems like this is a lot of vocabulary, and that's just because of our EQ, is we're going over what are the basic building blocks of geometry. And there's a lot of basic building blocks of geometry. So you've been doing great so far. We're just going to keep going. Collinear is whenever you have points that are in a line, or I can connect them with a line. So for example, here's collinear points. If your teacher ever told you to line up, you technically weren't lining up, you were making a segment because you didn't extend indefinitely. But these are collinear points. I can connect a line through them if I wanted to. Now, non-collinear points would be points that do not lie. This is off. So they're points that do not lie, my bad, on the same line. For example, here's some points, but then I have one up here, or I have one down here. This is not a line. That's just something else. A line has to be straight and it has to connect through all of them. So these ones are out. They're non-collinear. So just think co, together on a line. Non-collinear, they're not together on a line. Coplanar is the exact same thing. So for example, if I have a plane and I'm going to put some points in it, A, B, C, those are all coplanar because they're all together on that plane. Non-coplanar would be if I took this plane and I put a point out here. The best way to visualize this is to just think of a two-story building. All the people that are on the second story are all on the same flat surface. So they're all coplanar because they're all on the same flat surface. But if you have somebody walking downstairs, they're not on the same flat surface. They're on a different floor of the building. So that would be somebody that you're non-coplanar with. So now that we've talked about all of the basic building blocks of geometry, let's talk about intersections. Intersect just means when things meet or when things cross. So what do you get when two lines intersect? I'm going to draw it and have you take a guess. There's one line. Here's another line. Where they cross, you get a... Hopefully you said point. So a harder one to think about is what do you get when two planes intersect? If you just remember a plane is a flat surface, think of if you got a box or a package delivered. And I'm a horrible artist, so bear with me. You have a box delivered. Okay, for a plane, you have to think of what happens where the flat surface is. A plane's a flat surface. So what do you get where this flat surface, so there's one, the front of my box, and then the top of my box, you have to think, what do you get where they meet? In this case, what do you get where the purple and the green meet? Ask yourself, what does that look like? And if you said line, you're correct. Remember, a plane continues indefinitely, so technically where they meet the line would continue indefinitely, it would continue. And the one that people always have a hard time picturing is what do you get when a line and a plane intersect? And the way that I'm going to ask you to think about this is, let's say that you're back in school and you have a piece of paper in front of you and you're taking notes on it. And you're writing things down. Well, what are you using to write all that stuff down? You're using a pen or a pencil. And if you take that pen or that pencil and you connect it to the piece of paper, I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm using an iPad. I'm going to use my Apple Pen and I'm just going to intersect or touch or meet my Apple Pen with my paper, which is my iPad, and you're going to visually see what it makes. That was it. I just did it. I'll do it again. And I'm going to do it again and again. All I did was I just created, hopefully you figured it out, points. So overall, the key takeaway is, what are the basic building blocks of geometry? Well, there's quite a lot. There's points. Those points make lines. From lines, I have line segments. I have rays, opposite rays, angles, planes, bisectors. I can describe things with words like collinear or non-collinear. And we also have some shapes or things that are created whenever we have intersections. Hopefully you found this video full of lots of information. Hopefully you were able to take some notes. Remember that you can access this on Canvas as well. Be aware that that key might look slightly different from this key right here. But overall, make sure you wrote some things down and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.